We're afraid of what people will think, or we're afraid we're not good enough, or we're afraid we're too much. And so we hold ourselves back. When we do that, we're muting ourselves. And there are too many people that are muting themselves in the world. And I, for so many years, was one of them. I've discovered the power of unmuting myself, of showing up in the world in a way that is joyfully expressed and boldly alive. That's something that has been so important to me as I've discovered how freeing it is to be unmuted, to unmute our body and to unmute our ideas and to unmute our desires, to unmute ourselves in relationships and at work, and to be our own advocates and to ask for what we want and need. The unmuted life is a life that is fully alive and fully expressed and confident and clear. And to me, it's the only way that I know how to live now. I know what it's like to feel confined and stuck and small and silenced. And I also know what it feels like to be expressed and alive and joyful and present and seen. And it's so much better of a life to be unmuted. And that is what I want to bring you into. Are you ready to unmute yourself? Let's make it happen. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Unmute Yourself live show. I'm your host, Rachel Druckenmiller, and I'm so glad that all of you are here today. This is our second to last show of 2022. I can't believe it. When I launched this show last year, I dragged my feet on it for a long time, like a lot of us tend to do with things that we want to do. We're like, maybe I should do it. I don't know. Maybe I should do it. I don't know. And we think about it and we think about it. And then we either do it or we don't do it. And in this case, with the encouragement of a lot of people, including my producer, Tim Sohn, I launched the show this year, and it has been so much fun interacting with all of you. I'm seeing so many awesome people in the chat, Toby and Laura and Carol and Thomas, Michelle, Enrique, welcome, Veda, Susanna, another Michelle, Anna, Stephen, Bradley, Nathan, Denise, and so many amazing people. I'm so glad that you're here. This is going to be an awesome show. And as always, we're going to have a conversation about what it means to unmute yourself. And we're going to leave you walking away feeling excited and empowered and activated and energized. So we're so glad that you're here. And we know that this is a great way to kick off the week. You know, some of you are going to be listening to the replay later because of scheduling conflicts. And so let us know if you are with Team Replay or Team Live in the chat. And yes, hi there, Rich. Let's see. Rich is here. Michael's here. David. Oh, David's my cousin. Says, I hope he behaves about my dad. All right. So a couple of announcements, for those who are just joining us, maybe for the first time. I'm seeing some regulars that are in here. Again, my name is Rachel Druckenmiller, and I am a keynote speaker, workshop facilitator, and leadership trainer. And I work with organizations, associations, leaders, and teams to help them be more resilient, courageous, connected, and engaged. So as we get started here, I would love for all to drop in the chat. We've got a special show coming up next week where it's a very unmuted Christmas. And I did this last year and it was super fun. I sang songs to all of you for an hour. So drop in the comments, what is your favorite holiday song? Drop in the comments, what is one of your favorite holiday songs? I'm going to be singing. I have a list of about a dozen or so, 10 to 12 that I'm going to be singing. And it's so much fun. Some will be a cappella, some will be with a little bit of instrumental. But it's a joy for me. It's something that it's a way that I unmute myself with my creative expression is by singing. And so, let us know in the comments what your favorite holiday song is. I bet some of what you were going to throw out there is already on my list. And if it's not, and there's not room this year, we can certainly put it on the list for next year. Silent Night and Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. Classic. Oh Holy Night. That's a beautiful one. I love Mariah Carey's version of that song and Carrie Underwood's version, Laura, one of my favorites. All I Want for Christmas, good Mariah Carey hit. Oh, Holy Night, Jingle Bells. Not much of a holiday song person. That's okay. We welcome everyone here, whether you like holiday songs or not. The 12 Days of Christmas. That's a good one. That's a fun song. Jingle Bells, Michelle says. What else? What are your favorite holiday songs? You may notice these showing up on the playlist next week. And if you're just joining us, welcome. We're talking about next week's live show, which is going to be a special Christmas sing-along that I'm going to be doing. Last Christmas. Hey, Laura. God rest you merry gentlemen. So feel free to keep these dropping in there. I'm going to go back and look at this list. What is that song like? I want a hippopotamus for Christmas. Right? Is it the only a hippopotamus will do? Something like that. Yeah. But she talks really nasally. She sings really nasally. Go Tell It on the Mountain. Yeah, there'll be some fun ones. Okay. Well, some of the ones you guys have suggested are already on my list, which I'm really excited about. And others can be placed as holds. Or maybe they're little things I'll sprinkle snippets of in along the show. So that's going to be next Monday at noon Eastern time. A couple other quick announcements I wanted to mention before we dive into introducing our guest today. Is the reading list. So this has been mentioned before, but if you're looking for gift ideas for a friend, for a coach, for a boss, a coworker, I have a list of a couple dozen of my favorite books on my website, and they're related to things like well-being, leadership, employee engagement, public speaking, and even how to improve our relationships, our most intimate relationships like our marriages. So if you're looking for book ideas, they're on there, and we've got that listed below in the comments. So feel free to check that out if you're looking for some new book ideas for gifts, or just if you're looking for something to read over the break. And you can check out that list. Another thing I wanted to mention is LinkedIn News. I'm going to be a guest on their show. They have a show called Hello Monday. That's every Wednesday. And I'm going to be a guest on this Wednesday show. And so we're going to drop that information in case you want to check that out. It's going to be at 3 o'clock Eastern time. 3 o'clock Eastern time on Wednesday. So feel free to check that out. The other thing I wanted to mention is, let's see, I mentioned next week's show, Monday at noon, the 19th. If you are not already connected on Instagram, I post all sorts of things on there as well. And so we'll drop those links in the comments as well, so we can check those out. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention to all of you is, and I've mentioned this before, but within the month, my first original song is going to be released, and I'm so excited. I'll play just like a little brief snippet of the instrumental. Y'all heard it here first, because if you come to this show, like, you're ahead of the curve and you get to hear things and learn things before other people do. So I'm just going to play the first 10 or 15 seconds or so of the instrumental of the song. No lyrics, but the instrumental, so you can just hear it. It's beautiful. My friend Leroy Heisen is the one that did all the instrumentation on this. So I hope you enjoy this 10 to 15 second snippet of the instrumental of my first original song. Here you go. There we go. There's a snippet. And the song is called Somebody, just a heads up. So I'm super excited for that. Can't wait to release it to all of you once it's ready to go. We're almost finished the vocal tracks. It needs to be recorded and mixed and mastered. I don't even know what that fully means, but it's how they make the song sound awesome. So anyway, just a heads up that is going to be coming, and I'm so excited. So without further ado, thank y'all for sitting with us for that, holding tight for some of those announcements, and dropping in your favorite holiday songs in the comments. I want to introduce to you our guest for today. Now, I've known this person my entire life, like since day one. And one of the things I want to share with you is just a little bit about his background. He feels like he was born to be an entrepreneur. And by the time he was 12, he was running 6 or 7 kid businesses. Graduated from college and became a history teacher. And then 3 years into his teaching career, he had this epiphany. Said, I wanted to help people learn not just about history, but how to answer the question, how do I have an effective life? And in 1981, he went out on his own to start his own business. He refers to himself as terminally unemployable, which I can understand and appreciate. And he just had this passion for helping people get unstuck. And he's helped people with career coaching, time management, executive coaching, strategic and succession planning, negotiating, conflict resolution, and communication. And on top of that, he is a 6-time Ironman triathlon finisher, which is a really long race, 140.6, right? Mile race with swimming, biking, and running. And he was the person, both he and my mom are both entrepreneurs, but I feel like it was my dad's influence. He's been my Yoda, my career coach, my whole career. And somebody who just, show me what was possible. Show me that it was possible to love what you did, to not come home defeated by your job or your boss. He showed me that it was possible to have meaningful work. And for me, when I decided to leave my job 3 years ago, he was like rooting for me in the core. And, all along the way, in the years leading up to that, knowing that at some point I would follow in his footsteps and do my own thing as well. So without further ado, I want to welcome and invite, give a warm, unmuted welcome to my dad, Michael Bryant.
Hi, honey.
Hi.
How are you? You want to be my agent? You want to be my agent? Yes.
I think I already am in some ways.
Good. Keep it up. Keep it up. Keep those cards and letters coming.
I do. I know I'll have people that'll be like, oh, we need someone to do this executive coaching. I'll be like, I know a guy.
Yeah. I introduce myself now as Rachel's dad. They're, oh, you're Rachel's dad. I'm like, yeah, I'm Rachel's dad. on the side, I'm me, but I'm Rachel's dad, basically.
You're a very interesting person. I feel like one of the things I learned about you, I feel like we're talking today about unmuting your mind as part of it, but I feel like one of the ways that you really help me and other people unmute ourselves in our mind is by always learning. Like, you're the most curious person I know. And I'm curious, where does that come? We'll talk about your unmuted story too, but I'm curious, where does that curiosity come from, that you're just fascinated by things?
The curiosity, I think what happened is, I grew up all over the country. Your grandfather and my father worked for DuPont. And so we were building a lot of plants in the 50s and 60s. And we would move around. And so I got exposed to sort of all kinds of different environments. One of the things I learned very early is there aren't any strangers. There's just friends you haven't met yet. My parents did a good job of that, getting us acclimated to a new place. But one of the things I loved the most growing up was school. I just loved school. And I just loved learning. And I did well in school when I was younger, at least. And I think that's part of what my curiosity. I mean, in the summertime, my mom would take me to the library, and I would check out 30 books, and I'd bring them home, and I would just read one a day, and then take them back and get more. And so I've always had curiosity. I remember we lived in Texas, and in the back of the room, I was sitting, there used to be an encyclopedia, like books. There used to be books. And I sat right next to the Encyclopedia Britannica. And when I get my work done, I'd pick up A, and I just started reading through the encyclopedia. So I come by this honestly, I guess.
Well, I think we always said growing up, we're like, you should be on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? You should be on Jeopardy. You would crush it. Remember, we would sometimes like have you try to call in or something. We'd be like, Dad, you should call in and be on the show.
I contain an enormous amount of useless information.
Useless and useful, I think. Both
useful if you're going to be on Jeopardy, I would say, yes.
But just like your memory is impeccable. Like, you just remember so many things. And I'm curious, do you have any, this would be fun for people to hear. Do you have any memories of me growing up that, well, I'll ask you two questions. I ask you a book question in this one. And hi, welcome Maria and Steven. And we've got so many new folks, and Janine and Tom. Awesome folks that are here. Is there any story or memory of me that you think is sort of funny that would maybe be interesting for the folks here to hear of growing up?
It's actually a very sweet memory I have of you. It's when you were 5, and we were eating supper, and you said, Daddy, did you know there are people that they don't have money? At the time, it was always money for food and toys. I remember it was always the two major things in life: food. They don't have money for food and toys. And you said, I'm going to go get them some money. So I went out with you, and you went door to door and told people your story. And then we gave the money to the church up the street. So that's a very sweet memory I have of you. And another memory I have is when, because my office is in the house, you all grew up seeing strangers walk in and out of our house and paid absolutely no mind. I mean, the one thing that was known was when that door to Dad's office was closed, that was like the forbidden zone. And nobody ever walked in. I mean, it was just closed. I was never clients. And I remember you and I sitting at one of those little Tyco tables there, and I think you were drawing, and you said to me, "This is my most favorite way to play." And I said, "Oh," and I said, "Well, Daddy has to stop because Daddy has clients coming. I thought this was a good time to introduce you to the world of work at 4." And I said, "Do you know why Daddy works?" And once again, you said, "Yes, so that we can have money for food and toys." I said, "Well, that's one of the reasons Daddy works. But the main reason Daddy works is this is Daddy's most favorite way to play." And so I really wanted to instill in you very quickly, because when I started my business, I have this rule. And one of my rules is, if I wasn't in the meeting when they made the rule, I don't know if it's my rule. I'm not like anti-rule. I mean, I stop on red and go on green. But I decided that I was going to start my business. And one of the things I'd heard at the time was that when you start your business, like, you can lose money for like up to 2 or 3 years. I thought that's the dumbest thing I ever heard of. I'm not going to business to lose money. That's nuts. And so the other thing I heard is that you have to work 80 hours a week. I'm like, I got stuff to do. Like, that's not going to work either. So I decided that people used to work 7 days a week, and then they worked 6.5, then 6 and 5.5 and 5. I thought, well, I'll just be like the next wave, like 40 years ago. And I said, I think like 3.5 or 4, because I got other things to do. And I have these little humans around. Your sister wasn't here yet, but you and your brother were there. And I said, I want to be around with them. Cal Ripken said something very interesting once. He said, when your children are growing up, there's a tape being played all the time, and you have to decide whose message you want on that tape. So if you want your message on that tape, you have to be there, because if you're not there, and so I was certainly fine with other people's message, but I certainly wanted my message on, because one of the things that I had become crystal clear about, you talked earlier about this epiphany. I had a conversation with a client this morning, and I said, there's no such thing as an unepiphany. Like, you can't have an aha and unhave it. Nope. Cat's out of the bag. There you go. Particularly when you tell it to somebody else, now you really had it, because you're really in trouble now, because you've like made it official. And so, one of the things that I look at is that I was, as you said, I was teaching school. It was 8:00 in the morning. I'm talking to a group of 14-year-old girls who are bored to the point of just about passing out about the Missouri Compromise. I can't think of anything more exciting at 8:00 in the morning than that. This little voice jumped into my head and said, "Oh, there's Locke. Hey, Locke." the other one of the Iron Men, a 5-timer. And a little voice came in my head and said, "I don't know what I'm going to be doing when I'm 40, but it's not going to be this." And so a series of sort of serendipitous steps took me to starting my business. And from the beginning, I said, my goal is not to have a successful business. My goal is to have an effective life. And part of having an effective life is going to be work that works. So that was always part of the equation.
Yeah. Well, I remember you telling us when you were young, when we were growing up, you had an opportunity to work with clients in like New York City, living in Baltimore. And you're like, if I work with clients in New York City, I'm going to probably get more business in New York City. And then I'm going to be in New York City a lot. And then I'm like, not going to be here. So I'm going to say no to that.
And I turned it down when I didn't really have a lot of business.
Yeah.
Because I said, if you're going in another direction, well, then you're not going to get where you want to go. So even if you haven't gotten there yet, you're not going east by going west. You're not going to get north by heading south. So, a lot of times we have to make those kinds of choices. And I think one of the things that we mute the most is the self-talk, the messages we give. So often, how many times have people said, I knew not to do that, or I knew to do that, but I just didn't. And I often tell people, I don't think at the end of your life you're going to regret what didn't necessarily work, because everything doesn't work. I think it's going to bug you to death, but you didn't try. Yeah. And so much of that is just that, don't you think so, Rachel? That it's just that self-talk,
Well, what you're saying, there's a book that I love. Actually, this wasn't even planned, because none of this is really planned. It's conversation, but it's let me grab it. Hold on a second. So my next guest on my January show, my January 9th show, the New York Times bestselling author Daniel Pink is going to be on this show, y'all. Super stoked about it. And in The Power of Regret, which is his book, we're going to be talking about regret. He found that regrets of inaction, to your point, regrets of inaction are far more common than regrets of action, that we are much more likely to regret the things we did not do.
Sure.
Like he said, I could put together a travel agency for all the people that wish they studied abroad in college and I'd be rich. For all the adults that are like, I should have done it. And I'm like, I did it. You know what I mean? I studied abroad in college, or I wish I'd asked that guy out. Well, I asked that guy and we're 17 years later together, or, I wish we'd launched that business. Like we've both done that,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and so often the reason we don't, we go as far as our fears let us. And that's what stops us normally. And fear is so often about the perceived future. It's just something we make up in our head. And, because, we have, when you and I did our 3-day study with Rick Hansen, and he talks so much about the negative bias. That's one of the things that's so much fun being your dad. I'm like, hey, Rachel, I heard this thing. She's like, yeah, why don't we go? So we just went and we were in class together for 3 days. That was like, that was like very cool. And so it's the fear. But I think the other thing that we mute so much in our mind is we're so much influenced by what other people tell us is possible. I call them the death words. Possible, doable. These are the words that we limit ourselves with. Like, that's not possible. That's not doable. That's not practical. That's not realistic. Those are all made up. What's practical? Anything you can pull off by definition. If you pulled it off by definition, doable for you. And so often I tell people. So when I was talking to somebody and they said they know me better than I know myself. And I'll say to them, well, no offense, but since you've hung out with you 24 hours of every day of your life, if I want to know about you, I think I'd probably be asking you, you'd at least be in the top 3 of somebody I want to ask about you, because you kind of are you. But then I'll add, the lamest reason you'll ever come up with not to do something with your life, the one that you have, is because somebody else said so. That's just not acceptable. Well, I was going to do something, but you, who have never been me for a second, decided I shouldn't, so then I won't. That's a bad trait. That's just very, very bad trait. Don't do that trait. That's a bad trait. Bad trait. It
is a bad trait. Well, there's a book, and by the way, there's some folks are chiming in here. Maria, I'll get to your question in a moment, but even Toby's saying something similar, right? How many times do we say they don't know my story, so their opinions don't mean much, and yet we live like their opinions matter? Boom.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Nailed it, Toby. But they said there's Dad, I know you know about this book, The 5 Regrets of the Dying, by the nurse Brownie Ware, and she said the number one regret of people on their deathbed, is I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me.
And we so often overestimate what people are thinking about us anyway. It's this is what I tell people. To have a negative thought about you, they have to have a thought about you. And no offense, but they're normally thinking about themselves. The 3 biggest pronouns that come out of people's mouth are there, I, me, and mine. I mean, it's okay. I mean, you're hanging out with yourself all day. You're in your own head. I have no problem with that. But it's kind of if they are thinking about you, it's probably in relation to them. So they're indirectly thinking about themselves anyway. So, it's so what?
It's the thing. It's it's part of it is if we'd be sociopath, we literally didn't care about what anyone thinks ever, and we just did whatever we wanted. That's irresponsible behavior. But it's we can consider, I remember when I was launching my business, you and Mom were very encouraging the whole time, and you were like, you'll know when it's time. And I was frustrated for years, and you're like, you'll know when it's time. And I was like, when is it time? But I was very frustrated with myself and the whole thing. But I remember the number of people that would say to me oh, what's your business plan? I'd be like, oh, my plan is to get business. I don't really know. I didn't have a business plan. I didn't have a 4-month plan. I didn't have a 12-month plan.
Thank you.
I left my 13-year corporate job and was just I watched my parents figure it out. I'm pretty good at what I do. I've gotten enough social proof and feedback from having spoken enough times that I think I'll be able to figure it out,
Yeah. And I think the other thing, that you did was most so powerful is when COVID hit and people were like, nobody's coming to see me. You just looked at it and said, I think there's a big hole there and nobody knows how to do this. And I don't either, but I'm going to be the first one in doing it. And so I'll just get ahead of the curve. And then you got really, really good at it because you just did it over and over and over again. And that's basically how most people succeed. The adage that the way you get the way you make good decisions is with experience, and the way you get experience is you make bad decisions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I was in high school and college, I managed swimming pools, and I could tell you how every single filtering system worked, because at one time or another, I'd almost blown up every filtering system by turning a valve the wrong way. You don't have to do that once and then you relearn it. So, the brain encapsulates things that causes pain. So when we make mistakes, it's like, well, I don't want to do that again. So it's really, but I think the other thing that happens, the way we just sort of unmute the way we think, is in terms of how risk averse we feel. And as I'm into my 7th decade and counting, I figured out a long time ago that just as you age, naturally you become more risk averse. Just because you've experienced pain, you've experienced failure, and you don't want that to happen. And so I figured out a while ago that I need to do something that both excited me and scared me half out of my mind at least once a year. So, sometimes things like walk on hot coals. I mean, one year I prepared a relationship with my grandmother that, that was just not there. And that was kind of scary, but it was so glad I did that. And then
tell us about that if you want to.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So my grandmother was born in 1901. And my grandmother was one of the, one of the most caustic people you ever met. I mean, she was nasty. And when I got to be in my 30s, so she would have been in her 80s, I thought, you know what? It's kind of cool to be 30 because, and have a grandmother, because a lot of people don't. So I'm going to see if I can have a relationship. But we need to start this cautiously. So I wrote her a letter. She wrote me back, and her response was, "About time you wrote." To which I wrote back, "It was so nice hearing from you. I we'd accentuate the positive." Well, the letters began to increase. And then the letters became phone calls, and the phone calls became this. And then you and your brother got to go see her. She referred to you as her greats, all of her great-grandpa, her greats. And for her 90th birthday, I went to Hendersonville, North Carolina, where she lived and I was born, for her birthday. And she was staying in a, I guess, progressive care, not an assisted living kind of place, but progressive care. And she was still very, very, very sharp. And so I stayed with her in her apartment, and she brought out a photo album from World War I. And in that were pictures from her childhood. And there was a picture of her mother. And she said, "My mother died when I was 10. And she started to cry. And she said, "And at that moment, I decided that I would never get close to anyone again because they'll leave you." And at that point, I had the book. I had the book. I totally understand her. And it was just amazing. One of my fondest memories growing up is when I was 5. Treasure Island, Walt Disney's Treasure Island had come out, and that was kind of taboo if you were 5. That was just way too scary even for Walt Disney. So I wanted to go, but I wasn't allowed to go, and I got very upset. And my grandmother said, "You're coming with me." She took me to a park. I rode a pony. We had barbecue and came home. I remember it like it was yesterday, and I have the picture of it and sent it to her from the little boy who rode the pony. And it meant so much.
That's so special. I didn't know that story.
Yeah.
I didn't know the pony story. I knew the story, the letter story, but not the pony story.
Yeah. That was really, I still have the card and everything. Yeah, it was great. That's great.
That's so special. Well, you just filled out a book for me too. It's like my dad, I gave it to you as a gift, and you put all these stories in it.
Yeah. That was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Well, somebody said, "Well, that's a powerful story. Thank you for sharing."
Yeah.
And
we miss those opportunities sometimes. And I'm going to trade that for anything. I really just had, really kind of like, I mean, we, right up until she died at 95, in 95 it was the blizzard of 1996, in January of 96. And I couldn't make it to her funeral, but I said, that's okay. Because I was there when she was here.
Yeah.
It's okay. I couldn't make it, so often. How often do we do that?
Yeah.
We spend no time with someone when they're lying in a box. We catch up with them.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. It's a little late in the day. Kind of got the time now that you're kind of laying there, but kind of missed it when you were on the planet. It's like
yeah, it's true.
Yeah, because we're so busy. One of my favorite words is busy. Like when somebody says busy, I don't say that inside. It's in my inside voice, but I say busy. Oh, no one else is busy. What must that look like? Oh, busy.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like dismissive too when someone says, I remember I was at work and I had someone say to me one time, they asked, how are you doing? And I was like, I'm just really like, I was feeling really stressed out because of, it might've been right when I was getting married and also filling in for the marketing coordinator and doing my full-time job. And it was in graduate school. And so I was like justifiably stressed out. And I remember someone asked me, I just went to someone and asked me how I was. And I said, it was my boss. And I was like, oh, I'm just feel really busy. I'm like really stressed out. And she was like, well, everybody's busy. And it just felt like this dismissiveness. I'm like, well, yeah, like, let's get a little curious here and dig. And you're my manager. Maybe you might want to
exist.
understand.
You're gone. I have one of my contacts and one of my long clients. Every time I would call her, she would start the conversation with, I can only talk to you, I'm so busy. So what I learned how to do is I started the conversation and I said, I cannot imagine how busy you must be. But if you just have a minute. We went to lunch one day and I said, I'll get the waiter. I know you have to go. She says, no, I'm fine. She just wanted people to hear she was busy and acknowledge that she was busy. And that, to your point, because when you acknowledge who somebody is, you acknowledge that they're there.
Right.
And once they exist, anything's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if we're not acknowledging that, then what we're doing is judging them. Judging is always so problematic because judgment always says on some level you're less than me, less something, less aware, you're less responsible, you care less, you're less sensitive, you're less than me. And I haven't met anybody lately that thinks that's a good intro to having a meaningful conversation. I haven't. No. So far.
I don't think so. Well, I mean, I would say like you too, Dad, like speaking of unmuting, I know we've kind of dabbled in different things here, but I think, and by the way, Maria commented, she said, thanks for the session. I'm getting a lot of family values here. It's like, well, all in the family, here we are. So we're glad. We're glad to hear that, Maria. You're always very thoughtful in what you share. I think one of the things that I want to point out, because we don't always know people's backstories. And I shared this with you, Dad, like, this. I think it's important for us to communicate to the people that are meaningful to us, like as you talked about with your grandmother, with Nini, that it's important to let them know while they're here. And I feel like one of the things I've been very intentional about doing, whether it's writing a letter or just calling up and telling you, is like for you and Mom to let you know what you mean to me and how you've influenced me and what I admire and appreciate about you. And, sharing with you the other day how, growing up, I felt very guarded and was very reserved and timid, had a bit of tenacity, but you had to like dig up a little bit to get to that. But you were always the person that I felt safest with, that I felt like I could be myself. Like I could be sad. I could be upset. I remember when I was in second grade, so I don't know, 7 or 8, I went to Catholic school and everyone made their first communion and we're not Catholic. And so I didn't make my first communion, but all the kids were going to classes leading up to, and I would have to sit in the room and do like an art project by myself, which when you're 8, you're like, you don't get that. You don't understand why you get kicked out of the group when you're not part of it. And that was very painful for me to not be included. And they went to all these classes and then they had their first communion and all the girls got to wear these white dresses and they had parties. And I remember feeling so left out of that. And it was very sad to feel that sense of, and that happened throughout schooling. I had great schooling, but I always felt different than the kids I went to school with. And I remember you took me to a Baltimore Orioles baseball game and you got me a bag of Reese's peanut butter cups, which were like my favorite candy. And you got me a white rose.
Oh yes. Thank you. I remember that, honey. It was, that's so special of you because, as a parent, there is no more important job ever that's handed off to rank amateurs than being a parent. I mean, you have to have a license to drive a car. You have to have a license to fish. All you got to do to be a parent is just to have one. And I mean, you go through the basic things as a parent. I won't do this because that was done, but I will try this. And, whatever you try, it's a custom made for each of your children because what works for one doesn't work at all for others. They have to start all over again. So you always, you as a parent, you kind of, as you get older, you're kind of like, well, we probably didn't do that very well. But when I hear something like what you just said, it just means so much. It's like, oh, well, we did okay in that area. But I always felt that specialness with you. I always felt that closeness with you from the time you were with Peanut. This little, yeah. You asked me once why I call you Peanut, because I said, because when I brought you home, you were this little tiny peanut. I call you Peanut my whole life. It's just our thing. It's just what we do. Yeah, but we have so little time. I mean, at the end of the day, you've heard the adage, you never saw a hearse pulling a U-Haul. You're not taking this stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, particularly the older you get, it's just all about relationships. The thing that has been as meaningful to me in the Ironman that I've done, and is the relationships that I've made. And that even and the race itself is the race. I mean, I had a rough race this year. It did not turn out, and so newsflash, I signed up today. So
you did? Oh my gosh!
I did.
Oh dear! God bless Mom.
I did. Yeah, I have. I got the blessing, but I have a on my aero bars on my bike. I have two little words: unfinished business.
So there we go.
Not done. Not yet. This is no
motivation.
Chapter of the book's going to be closed on my terms. not yet. So away we go. And I think so many of us have unfinished business.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah, and it's a way that I think we mute ourselves. We're like, oh, it's too late for me to do that. Or I don't really know what I'm writing a song. I don't play instruments or read music. I could look at that and be like, what business do I have writing and recording a song? Like, I don't know how to do 2/3 of what's required to make a song. I can sing, and I think I can write lyrics, which I have also never done before, but I'm a writer and I'm a speaker. So I understand the cadence of flow of music. And yay. Oh, Bill, my husband, Bill writes, yay. He just heard your news. Oh dear.
It's my fellow Ironman. Right there is my fellow Ironman.
Yes.
The stud with the spud right here. Yes.
Yes. My husband, Bill, has done an Ironman 6 years ago with my dad.
Yeah. And the most fun with that was the training with him. That was the whole race. It was the relationship that we just added on to.
Yeah. Maria says maybe 2023 will be the year. Hey, it's the thing. Like, it'll be the year. You get to decide what kind of year it's going to be. Like, what are the things? Like, I'm working on my first TEDx talk outline. I'm getting pitched for a TEDx talk, and I'm in the process of submitting my first book proposal. And like, those are two things I've always wanted to do, and I've started doing both of them. Like, I started writing a book 5 different times over the past 7 years, but like, now I'm finally doing the thing. So
yeah, and all the stuff that you're doing, it's all made up. So the whole thing is made up.
Yeah.
It's just made up. Like, if it's made up, like, make up what you want.
Right.
It's all made up anyway. I mean, it's just like, it just adds to the story. It's just like, what kind of story, like what kind of life do you want to have? You want to have an interesting life? Go do interesting things.
Right.
Now, you want to have a fun life? Go do fun. We have this idea. There's two kind of people in the world. There are adults that we look at them sort of derisively, like they're Peter Pan or something. Like, oh, they're happy. Oh, they're happy. They're not official adults because they're happy. If I had their money, if I had their connection, I'd be happy too. And then the rest of us, our job is to like make the trains run on time. And like, maybe you get happy, but you're like the serious people. I'm like, this is nonsense. That is just such nonsense. You can love what you do. You can do very well, and you can be comfortable. Mm-hmm. You can do well while doing good.
Yeah.
They're totally not mutually exclusive. I mean, people, the reason they are is because people set the goal that way. Yeah. Well, I'm going to do my job because it's a job, because that's why they call it work, because it's work. And then I'll get to do the fun stuff. And then when I retire, one of my mentors was a man named Richard Bowles. He's passed away, but he wrote a book called What's Color's Your Parachute. And he wrote a book after that book called The 3 Boxes of Life, which was very interesting, which talks about the 3 boxes that we grow up in. So we start in the learning box. We spend this inordinate amount of time up to the age of about 22, sometimes a little longer. And then we jump into the work box. And then from the work box, we move into the play box, and then we dead. We go to these elephant burial grounds, after we stop working. In the 19th century, the word retire was a moving toward verb, like retire to the parlor, retire to the bedchamber. And then it became a moving away from verb, but we moved away from work, but not to anything. I can't tell you how many people I work with that have done extraordinarily well financially. And they've stopped working very young, and they go off and do what I call play themselves to death for anywhere from like 6 months to 18 months. And then they're right back in my office. Like, well, that's not going to work. And I'm like, no. I mean, it's like people are like, when are you going to retire? I'm like, what? Because you can do what you want. I'm like what I do now, like what I've been doing like for 40 years. I mean, it's like, and I talk to interesting people that tell me interesting things. Like, why would I not do that? That doesn't make any,
Yeah. From the comfort of your home. They don't even have to drive anywhere.
As you know, the commute is like outstanding. As you know, the commute is great, particularly with bad weather. You can't beat the commute. It's like, yeah.
You're like, let me log on. Let me have a conversation with
very
somebody.
Much. Yeah,
perfect.
very much. Yeah. I mean, I got to be at my job at 9:00. Let me show up at 8:58, and I'll be right there.
Yeah.
I love this platform. I think this platform is fantastic. It's just giving us such a, don't you find that you've been able to use it really effectively?
Yeah, to be able to connect. I mean, all the people that are here. I mean, I'm just looking through all the names of folks like Toby and Maria and, Tim and Bill and Susanna and, Steven. Some of these people I've met in person, obviously, or live with or been related to. And then others I only know, Veda, Janine, that I know through Gabe, Thomas, Bill, another Bill Bradford, through this community of, being connected online. And I think it's really powerful to see other people unmute themselves in moments like this when they show up and support each other too. I mean, that's another way I think we can unmute ourselves is, by doing that. And
Mom just joined in.
Yeah, Mom. Oh, she's been here. I saw her comment, little town of Bethlehem, a little while ago. So she's here. Nancy Bryant, my mom.
I'm Mr. Nancy.
Mr. Nancy.
Mr. Nancy and Rachel's dead.
Isn't it Nancy's butler? Isn't that what they called you?
Was that
Nancy's butler?
Nancy's butler. Yes,
you refer to yourself as Nancy's butler. Yeah.
Everybody needs a pet. I'm a good pet.
Well, I'm wondering, Dad, I guess something you could share with us, one of the things I like to talk about in here, conversations is, and yes, Nancy is married to our guest today, my dad, Michael. My maiden name is Bryant, Rachel Bryant.
For 42 years.
42 years.
And she's still cute.
And she's still cute. She still loves you.
Go figure. Only in America.
Go figure. Well, I want to know, I guess one of the ways that you're unmuting, and I would love if you could share this in our last, kind of third of our time together. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've seen you and Mom do in way of unmuting yourself that's positively affected me is the way that I've seen you consistently invest in your marriage and invest in learning how to communicate better and what it's done for me. And then I want to hear your perspective on it and story about, getting to that place is that it showed me that it was normal from a very early point in my marriage to get help with things that you struggle with. And so Bill and I went on our first marriage retreat when we'd only been married for 2 years, and we've since gone on multiple, and we really prioritize investing in our relationship when things are good so that we can upskill ourselves and give ourselves tools to use. So when things get hard, it's not like everything's a crisis. So I know that you and Mom, your journey, whatever you want to share about that, a way that you were maybe muted or that either of you was muted, and a way that you went through a process of unmuting.
Yeah, I think what happened, I think both of us were muted growing up. As I think what happened is that we came from, we came from a different world. It was very much our world, very much, but we came from very much an adult-centric universe where, the adage of children are to be seen and not heard and those kinds of things. And so you really didn't get much of a voice. And so, thank you, Stephen. It is a long marriage. Is that when we came to the marriage, we didn't have the skills. We didn't have the skills and we didn't have the technology. I mean, so often people say, well, you just need to listen. Well, if it was so easy, don't you think everybody would? I mean, it's very difficult. So, we went through this rough patch where we separated, when you and Zach were 4 and 5. And we realized two things very quickly. Number one, that we weren't very good at being together and we were worse being apart. And we're like, well, you have to be something. And so, as fate would have it, I was watching the Oprah Winfrey Show, of all things, and a relationship therapist named Harville Hendrix came on. And Harville Hendrix had written a book called Getting the Love You Want. And I found it just absolutely mind-bending what this guy was talking about. What he was talking about that was most important. Hey, Zach, was that you can. There is a technology which they refer to as dialoguing or safe conversations, which basically is a systematic way where one person talks and the other one listens, and you basically take turns. We knew two things very quickly. One is that we were struggling, and number two is we had this family. We had these two children, and we basically said, if this isn't going to work, it's not going to be acceptable when they get older to not tell them we didn't do everything we possibly could. And we said, we haven't done it. So what we would do, we put you to bed at night, and we couldn't go anywhere. We didn't have any help. And we took a chapter in the book once a week and went together and learned this process. We then went to spend time with Horrible. We now teach this process to other couples, and I use it extensively in my work. I mean, extensively. I mean, I just really spend so much time talking to people about the adage that it's not what you say, but how you say it. And to really, I mean, I had somebody the other day and they said, my boss thinks I'm so unreasonable. And my boss thinks that, no matter how fast I get done, it's not good enough. And I said, what does your boss need? I don't know. I said, well, ask them, kind of cheating. What if you asked? Well, I don't know. Well, what would they say? I don't know. I'm in my own mind all day, know what's going on. You'd have to ask them because, as it turns out, as you were pointing out earlier, is about curiosity, is that the opposite of judgment is not acceptance. The opposite of judgment is curiosity. Because when you become curious, then basically you open yourself to a whole new world. So, we really, we model that. We're very skilled now. It's like, it's like anything, I think the bike I had, I've ridden it 30,000 miles. I mean, I can ride a bike. Okay, well, I can do this month. And, and when we need help, we'll still seek out help. We're talking with a therapist right now who's very helpful, helping us deal with some issues. She's also an imago therapist. The imago is the Greek word for image. And it's just helping us take our relationship to even another level, because we just, our relationship is great, but we want our relationship to be amazing. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's only one thought in my entire life that I cannot contemplate, and that's life without your mother. I just have no, that's what I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like, you don't go there.
No.
There's no there, but I mean, it's just an amazing part of just, I mean, this is my very best friend in the whole world. This is, we bike, swim, and run together. We watch Family Feud together. I
know, you nerds.
We just have such, we started a conversation 45 years ago that's still going on. That's what our relationship is. This amazing conversation we started 45 years ago, and we're still having it.
Yeah. And you acknowledge that when things get hard. I think that one of the lessons I learned watching you guys, because when you had your vow renewal in 1991,
you were the flower girl.
I was a flower girl. Zach was a ring bearer, my brother. And then I drew the program cover. It was like two people that were like egg shapes or something. I guess that's what my capability was at 6.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But I guess what I saw from that was I saw that a broken thing can get redeemed. And that was what I learned. And that was a really important lesson. I wasn't consciously aware that's what I was learning at 6. Mm-hmm. But in retrospect, I look at that and say, oh, I had an expectation that relationships could be hard and there would be things that would happen that were painful or difficult. And that wasn't a reason to just run and hide. That was an opportunity to lean in and to learn and to grow in some way.
Yeah. And Zach just brought up about speaking with therapists. I think it's so important that, nobody that I've ever known has done anything of real significance alone.
Yeah.
I mean, really not. I mean, when I started, as I've told you many times, Rachel, the secrets of life are all contained in Iron Man. So, of course,
I know.
It's just amazing how, how many things that I've learned that I can take into other parts of my life. But, one of the things in the book that I wrote you that it was talking about was, what are your goals for the next, 3 to 5 years, I think it said. And I was saying to you, I'm just reinventing myself again. I don't know. It's I mean, I know some of the stuff I like, I'm going to still like, but that's, I have some specific, I want to go to the World Championship in the half Ironman distance in the next couple of years, I have a few goals like that, but I want to go back, I want to go back to Europe, but, a lot of, a lot of it's just kind of like watching, I love things. It's just like watching you, and watching you grow and watching where your life goes. It's just like, and we get to be a part of it, which is so much fun too.
Yeah, we like to do stuff. I mean, like we actually like spending time with you. You know what I mean? It's not
it's really nice when your kids like you, hang out with you. That's kind of cool,
But like taking initiative, like even as like what I see you guys doing, even still, like I've been in, and Zach mentioned this, we're both very open about therapy, and we are. And Toby asked a question that I'm happy to touch on, curious about how faith has affected or influenced your family. But, and one thing before we get to that I wanted to just, say is I feel like both of us have shown each other grace. Like when you guys have messed something up and you've owned it, I've been in a place of being able to say like, thank you for acknowledging that and not continuing to hold a grudge. Or like, you screwed this thing up and now I'm forever mad at you. It's like, well, no, if someone's willing to be humble and acknowledge that they've made a mistake or they haven't done something up to par or they messed up something and they're willing to acknowledge it. Like, let's be people that can show grace, because that's a way we can unmute ourselves. It's a way that we can stuff down that pride and arrogance that wants to come up when we want to be right. But I find that to be helpful. And I find that seeing you guys in your, late 60s, early 70s, even be able to come to me and acknowledge things that maybe weren't the most ideal growing up. Like that's meaningful. And it shows me by example.
Letting somebody know that their sense makes sense.
Yeah.
Like that's real because I said it's real. Yeah. I mean, so oftentimes with your mother, I'll be, well, and that makes sense that you feel that way because I did that. It makes sense that you feel like I wasn't listening because I wasn't listening.
Yeah.
But sometimes, you know what? That's all you need.
Yes.
That's all you need. It's like, okay, I just wanted to know that I just wanted to be seen. I just want, because nothing else is possible until you do that.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. If you're not, because if you're not there, you're an object. And if you've ever noticed, we actually, as humans, we're not really good at warring on same species. We actually, when we go to war, we have other names. Like you're not a human, you're a combatant, and you're the enemy, and you're a casualty. You're not actually a person. And we actually kill the enemy. We don't kill like a person. During the Civil War, Lincoln referred to the South as those people. Those people. And then at one point, somebody said something about this, and he goes, "Well, we're all those people, though. But we're all those people. It's like we're all there." And I think sometimes we forget, like just being able to understand that in another person can help you be in touch with that with yourself. And what you do that's so graceful on your part is you basically say, "Okay, that's what happened," but you can only learn life looking backward, but you have to live it moving forward. And so, people that want to live their life forward, looking at what's backward, are just, they're going to
to what end, right? It's like to what end?
It's going to be a long day. That's all I can say. It's going to be a rough road if that's the goal. It's like, but look what I didn't do. I oftentimes say to people, and because just like you, because you share this with me, people have told me horrendous stories of what have happened in their life. They are absolutely gut-wrenching. And I am the first person to say to them, I am so sorry that happened to you. That should have never happened to anybody. Having said that, and not in a dismissive way, now you're here. Everybody got here somehow. You're here. What do you want to do? What do you want to do with that? Because we're here now. We got here by all kinds of means, but you're here. What do you want your life to become?
Yeah.
I don't suggest worshiping that altar of your past.
Yeah.
I'm talking about how, energy follows attention. If you attend to all the things that didn't work, you're going to see your life as something that doesn't work. It's like, when I race people are like, how do you feel? I'm like, I'm like executing. I'm like in the race. I'm like, I got stuff to do. I mean, I don't know. I'll feel about it later. I got to get things done,
Yeah.
I have a job here. I got to get from the swim. But it's interesting. There are actually 4 events in Ironman, just like there are in life. So in life there's 4 events in Ironman: the swim, bike, run, and the thing you don't know is happening. The thing you don't know. Well, Yep. Yeah. This year I was swim, bike, done. There's actually a designation. It's actually swim, bike, done. It's not a DNF. It's swim, bike, done, and I was done. You know what? I wasn't disappointed. Because I think one of the things I learned when I race, I have have three goals. Number one is to go as hard as I can, as fast as I can, as long as I can. The second one is to do my best. And the third is always to learn something about myself and something I use in another race. I checked all those boxes this year. So it wasn't a failure at all. I was not disappointed. I was dissatisfied. And I said, okay, if you're dissatisfied, then so often we mute ourselves. We stop there.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't work out.
Oh, well.
I'm like, no, that's how you're going to end the book? That's the last chapter you're writing in that book? Like, really? Like, no.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I'm shot out of a cannon right now. I mean, I'm like, I said to your mother, I said, don't even think what happened this year's happening. It ain't happening. Like, you know, it's not happening, you know. The t-shirts will be out. I don't even know what they're going to say. They're going to be embraced with unfinished business.
Okay.
I've already got my cartoon.
Perfect.
Oh yeah, that's because I think it's a good metaphor for life.
Yeah. And then it's never too late. I think that's what's the Satchel Paige quote? How old would you be if you didn't know how old you were? What was it? What's the quote?
Satchel Paige. Yeah. How old would you be if you didn't know how old you were? So Satchel Paige pitched in the major leagues in his 50s. He was in the Negro League, so because of segregation, he couldn't pitch in the major leagues. Is that why you're encouraging me to do Eagle Man? No, honey, I'm encouraging you to do Eagle Man because you're a beast. That's why I'm encouraging that. Because you're probably going to win your age and go to the World Championship in Finland. I want to go with you. That's why.
So for context, an Eagle Man is a half Ironman.
Yes, which is 70.3 miles as opposed to 140.6 miles.
70.3 miles.
Mildly insane as opposed to totally out of your mind to do that. You know?
Exactly. But seeing that, I mean, I feel like that just for real, anyone who's here as we kind of wrap, and then if there's anything you want to mention about how faith has affected our family, I don't know we're gonna have time necessarily, but just how the importance of being role models for the people in your life. I recognize people are watching you. Like I was watching my parents growing up. I was watching how they worked. I was watching how they handled their marriage. I was watching their curiosity. I was watching all of that. I remember when you and mom came home from a Tony Robbins conference when I was 13 and you walked in the door and you said, mom's going to start her own business. So I'm like a 13-year-old girl that hears that my mom is going to start her own business. And she's been working for herself now for almost 25 years.
Yeah. Yeah. It was so funny because I said, I'm going to walk on hot coals. I'm not walking on hot coals. 2:30 in the morning, who's right behind me going right across those things, but your mother. So, I mean, it was like, and the decision was made on the ride back from New Jersey. And it's like, let's go. Let's give it a whirl. Let's.
Yeah.
I think you can do it. Sure. I think you'd be great. Like here you go. I mean, it's now we have a whole family of these people.
I know, of these people that are terminally unemployable.
These people, totally. Not, like a job. Oh my gosh, like a job. I'm not opposed to jobs. I think they're great. I work for people that have them. They employ me. I love them actually.
Yeah, ditto.
No, not like a job. Like a job. I want to do what I want to do when I want to do it the way I want to do it. That's called being self-employed. That's just how that works.
Well, I remember when you asked me that, you were like, so do you want to do what you want to do when you want to do it the way you want to do it? I said, yeah. And you said, honey, that person doesn't work for somebody else. I was like, I know.
No, that's not how it would know. I had a client once wanted to hire me full time and they said, you can do everything you're doing now. I said, I'd have to ask. I said, I don't ask anybody. I do what I want.
No
I am
permission.
owner of my own body. I do what I want to. Yeah.
Yes.
And, so much, don't you find that helps you stay unmuted for yourself? Just being able to have your own world. You don't have to have a meeting with anybody. I mean, I love my meetings. They happen when I want them to. Only the people that are there that I want to be there. They're over when I say, and everybody loves my ideas. Like, why would I want to have those all? The best meetings like ever. I love my meetings.
It's the best. Well, and a final word, I know I can't believe we're already at time. And by the way, drop in the comments if you've been joining us, if you enjoyed today's conversation. Would love to hear if there is a nugget of wisdom or insight. I know we had talked. I said, Dad, I want to bring you on the show at some point. And finally, we're like, let's get it in before the holiday episode. This will be the last official conversation episode of the show. So you can let us know if you enjoyed today's conversation. I'm seeing you put a little emoji in the chat if you want to drop an emoji for maybe how you're feeling right now. Maybe we'll follow up, Dad. I guess as we're closing, is there any word you want to say about? I know this could be an hour conversation itself, but any closing thoughts you want to say about the connection to even like faith and all the things that you've gone through and the way that you approach your
Yeah,
life.
I think there's a correlation between faith and worry. I think when your faith is high, your worry is low. Whenever you basically are worrying, you've lost faith in something. It's God or your abilities or what you think about yourself. So I think faith in things greater than you is just so critical in your life. Again, it goes back to you don't do any of this alone. I mean, this is the work I was intended to do.
Yeah.
You know, I know you feel the same way.
Yeah. And people said, Rich said in the comments, I don't know if I could find it, but he made a comment of like Rich Gasson, who comes on this show all the time. He's a regular. And he said, like, I see where you get your spunk from, Rachel. Oh, I totally see where you get your spunk and values, Rachel Druckenmiller. What a great role model to grow up around. And I agree. So Dad, thank you for being on our show. We'll drop the link to my dad's LinkedIn, to my dad's my dad's LinkedIn page and his website are in the chat. So feel free to connect. And this episode will stay here on LinkedIn. It'll be on YouTube. It'll be on Facebook. But thank you all. I just want to give shout outs to my husband, Bill, your son-in-law, to Thomas, to, of course, to Tim and Michelle and my mom, Nancy, Stephen, Maria, Toby, Janine, all of you, Zach, who are here today, Gabe. There's so many people. I couldn't name all of them at once. But yes, grace and humor will take you far in life. And Toby says it was fascinating, curious, interesting, and beautiful, all wrapped together.
Well,
so
thanks for having me, honey. I love you.
Love you too. And everybody, we will see you on Monday, December 19th at noon, right back here when I'm just going to be singing you some Christmas songs. So come back and we'll see you then. And then again, January 9th, Daniel Pink will be our guest. Same time, same place. Thank you everyone for joining us. Have a great week. Bye.
Bye.